Hello, everyone. It's a bit of a lonely one, this one. It's a pre-record. I'm currently presenting the back half of this year's North East Rail Engineers Forum. I'm recording this today, earlier. In fact, it's 3 o'clock, so I need to get on with it. It's going to be a fairly short one, but we've got some news to cover. That's what we're going to be covering. A bit of a theme emerging that it's there's a bit of discussion of fares in this one. So we're going to kind of cover that along with a few other news items. But first, of course, we have to talk about the wonderful Class 231. Look at this, beautiful. Not like the junk that we had. It's not junk, but the sorry, V-Rail, RIP. But whatever we had on last week. No, this is far superior. Indeed, the best rural fleet running out on the network right now. Level boarding, Stadler flirts, Thrashbox. Fantastic. This is what trains should be like in the UK, across the UK. Just absolutely excellent trains. If you want to know why they're excellent trains, go back to the episode where Simon and I ride around in the Greater Anglia network on the sister fleet to these. It's been running a bit longer. Just superb. This is the gold standard. Let's see the other train manufacturers step up, shall we? In the meantime, everyone, welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. As the Intercity 225 fades away, God, that was loud, wasn't it? We start with the HS2 Alternative plan, the plan that Burnham and Street sort of initiated and gave to Arup. It's really, really poor, folks. I understand why they've done the kind of political triangulating on this alternative plan, but Arup, what are you doing? It's just junk. Arup, you've let some inexperienced grads, or worse, some pure consultants who have no engineering background look at this. People who have done some playing with the sort of the Excel spreadsheet with unit rates without understanding what the implications are. So, two key examples of this, of the fact that first of all, this plan is saying use the existing corridor with all the land as it is now, but you can make it cheaper somehow, 40% cheaper somehow magically. To which my response is, no, you can't, because the cheapest possible plan is to build the design that we currently have and progress that design. Anything else will involve hundreds of millions of pounds of new design. It will involve new consultations. It will involve enormous amounts of additional outpouring fees of design and contract letting and such. There is no quicker or cheaper way to build this line. This bit of the line, because let's not forget the leads leg. There's no cheaper or quicker way to build this bit of the line than as it was planned before it was chopped up by Sunak. Build that line now. You could not build a single track line with a handcart quicker than building the current plans. Like literally, you could not. So I don't buy into it. And then examples of some of the bobbins that's within this that shows that there is very poor engineering understanding underneath some of the claims about cost. Arup, again, what are you doing? Saying that getting rid of slab track will be cheaper. No, it won't. Not even in capital cost, because on this section of line, the railway skips on and off bridges and in and out of tunnels, such that you would have so many transitions from slab track to ballasted track, each of those being very expensive, that in and of itself would cost a large amount, not picked up in unit rate changes. What else? Yes. You will need infrastructure maintenance loops that you do not need with slab track that you do need with ballasted track that involve, four S&C units, long S&C units per infrastructure siding. The sidings are like several hundred meters long, 400 meters long, whatever. Those are very expensive. They add cost that offsets the difference in ballasted track. Also, even if you ignore all that and just say, ballasted track does represent a saving, that's like a saving of like 1 million to 2 million quid per single track kilometre versus, so that's versus when the whole thing is costing, say it's 1 to 2 million a mile, or 2 to 1 million a mile. The whole thing costs 100 million a mile. That's not making any difference. It's certainly not 40%. The other thing is gauge, which is very stupid as well. Again, does not represent any kind of major saving. I cannot stress enough the extent to which saying that engineering is the reason this stuff costs as much as it does is like, it's like a very New Labour technocratic, well, you know, you can easily blame that because then it's not our fault as the politicians. The reason this thing costs so much is because of the political meddling. And this, coming up with a new plan, will just add cost, it will not reduce it. So, hence why Jack Fifield here has included some of my comments in the Bolton News explaining why it's a really bad plan. Shout out to Bolton News and Jack. Hi, Jack. So let's move on from that. Meanwhile, you know, fixed long distance travel to cut emissions. This is kind of, you know, a key obvious thing that we've said before, but it's just another bit of work with some input from ITS Leeds going. Only 2.7% of travel in England is a long distance trip, but this accounts for 70% of passenger travel emissions. This is why long distance travel is so important, and this is why rail is so critical in the picture. Just wanted to kind of punctuate the previous line with this one. So, a little bit more on Euston. I'm not going to dwell on this. So, yeah, the Standard have picked up the fact that there was yet another day of extreme, you know, yesterday, in fact, a day of extreme London Euston chaos. Lots of people shouting about how unsafe and uncomfortable they felt. Extreme overcrowding. Network Rail has acknowledged a challenging day on Sunday that saw bad weather and a trespasser cause misery to thousands looking to travel northwest of the capital, with many feeling conditions were unsafe, including those who said they needed to wait outside in the pouring rain to avoid a crush. Improvement has been demanded. Sadly, this Standard piece didn't actually reference the Hendygate story, but yeah, it's quite painful for Network Rail that this is going to happen. This is just going to happen like every week. This is just going to continue happening every week. I look forward. There is more developing on the Hendygate story. Keep your eyes peeled. Although journalism corner has somewhat slowed things down a bit. Come on, New Statesman. Come on, folks. Get it out. Get it out there. Let folk read it. Anyway, so yeah, and see, this is some of the pictures here. Again, the pictures don't quite capture, I think, the videos, and the videos of people running for trains and such are kind of some of the more visceral and unpleasant things to watch when we think about crushes and the implications of crushes. But it's not the only story. You know, one of the things I talked about through this whole thing is not just safety of everyone, but safety of disabled people in particular, who already have an unpleasant experience. And as a recent court win by friend of the show, Doug Pally, has pointed out, discrimination court win over UK's worst station for assistance shows need for reform and culture change. Network Rail have had to compensate Doug to the tune of about 1,300 quid for yet another failed assist at Euston Station. When and associated unpleasant experiences. I think Doug was out travelling. I think Tony was out travelling as well. Several colleagues at the Campaign for Level Boarding and literally dodged behind a pillar to avoid the oncoming. In their scooter, dodged behind a pillar to hide from the horde running the opposite direction to get the train, having been late off the train themselves. It's a mess. Euston is a real mess, and it doesn't make me happy to see these circumstances happening more and more, because what's the consequence? The consequence is going to be someone being seriously hurt or worse. And that's not going to, and we've yet to see any contrition from Network Rail over, apologising to me for what they've done to me and my job, but more importantly, acknowledging that what I said actually was, correct and it was valid, and they are, solving the problem. No, they've hunkered down and are trying to pretend that everything's fine. It's the worst institutional failure that you could imagine right at the top of the industry, and it's very, very upsetting. And there's more to be said on Euston. There's more to be said on Hendygate. We may revisit it again soon, but let's hop forwards though. Grand Central have announced they're intending to buy some new bi-mode trains. I wonder what those will be. Be interested to see what gets picked up. Might well be an expansion of the CAF LNER. The new LNER fleet, which I'll be finding out tonight from LNER presenting to us. Tina Thompson joining us tonight at NERIF. So that's a new fleet. Bi-mode trains. In the literature for this, I've not seen any mention of level boarding rather. Curious. Whereas in Scotland, we hopped to Scotland for a little bit of news. The new intercity fleet, the replacement for the HS2s, is explicitly level boarding. We hop forward to the there's Fiona Hislop, by the way, who's the Transport Secretary in Scotland. Procurement will be led by ScotRail on behalf of Transport Scotland, will seek a replacement for the HSTs. 4 million journeys, blah, blah, blah. Not a huge amount said here, but there is, on Twitter and some of the other statements, press releases, they have said that this fleet will be level boarding capable. which is good. If it is, that means that it has to be a new fleet rather than being the home of the Meridians. So it'll be interesting to see if that does end up being the case. If it does, good. But I think it's high time Scotland stopped having hand-me-downs and bought itself a new dedicated fleet. That would be very good. We can move on from the embarrassment that was the HSTs. It's not all good news north of the border, though, because the Fair Trial pilot, in the same breath, Fiona announces new trains, also says we're canning off the peak fare removal, off-peak only fares trial. We're getting rid of it. Pilot will have been welcomed in saving many passengers hundreds and in some cases thousands of pounds during the cost of living crisis, but this level of subsidy cannot continue in the current financial climate on that measure alone. So this is interesting. I want to pick up some stuff on this. So Conrad Landon, friend of the show, has picked out that this trial was budgeted to cost 40 million. The actual cost has only been 25 million. So that's 15 million pounds that's kind of been offset. Essentially, like the additional uptake of peak time passenger journeys achieved 68% of the self-financing target. So that's 6.8% of a 10% target. The trial is essentially more than paid for itself. Car parks are absolutely rammed at places like Stirling, which so more people have chosen to take the train as a result of the trial. Extra car parking revenue probably ought to have been included in the figure as well. Conrad also points out that Conrad doesn't need to point this out. I know lots of people in Scotland having to deal with this right now. That there's still a stupid temporary timetable. There's major staffing and overtime issues. Like, rail travel has been a right mess in Scotland for a long time, and that is likely to have hit the trial as well. So it's frustrating that this is being canned off. It's worth saying that the vote, the SNP suffered another defeat within the hour of the day of voting back on the 11th of September. Well, I'm on that day again. So they're actually defeated in Parliament against bringing back peak rail fares, but they can just overwrite that, unfortunately, so it doesn't really matter. But that's frustrating. Meanwhile, in other fare trials, David Horn had a bit to say about the fact that the frankly awful LNER fares trial is being expanded from the 1st of October. David Horn, I'm going to use David Horn's words to sort of see what David's and LNER's justification is for this, because to my mind, this just looks like something that's been forced on LNER by First Group to make more people travel by Lumo. Anyway, right, a few words on today's Telegraph article, the Telegraph headline being, commuters forced to buy more expensive flex tickets on LNER trains. Yes. Worth saying, the super off-peak fare is brilliant. I use it a lot, and the idea of losing that is extremely frustrating, and I don't see the... So, right, let's just read this. We're working hard... This is David Horn's words. We're working hard... I'm not going to do David Horn. He's got a softly spoken sort of southern northern accent, if that makes sense. Does David? He's sort of a East Midlands, but kind of the bit of the East Midlands that taps into the north a little bit. That's David Horn's accent. Anyway, David, shout at me if you don't agree that that's your accent. Anyway, a few words in today's Telegraph article. We're working hard to simplify fares. The need to do so and to make rail travel easier is clear. Okay, so I'm going to pick up on that. Firstly, this is, as lots of people pointed out, this doesn't represent a simplification. There's still just as many complications. And more importantly, tickets with complicated caveats on their use as well. So I don't agree that this is a simplification. With all of our fares on the Simpler Fares pilot routes available for travel all day, there's no more confusing peak and off-peak times to think about. Sure. There's an alternative way that you could have taken that approach, which is get rid of peak fares. Anyway, this trial is not about increasing prices. Okay, let's see what David's justification for that is. Advanced fares are the ticket of choice for most of our customers on LNER. Almost 90% of standard class advanced fares on our pilot routes are available cheaper than the super off-peak fare. This equates to millions of advanced tickets available to buy now for travel over the next 15 weeks. Okay, I'm going to just pick up on this because it's really important. Often the people who can least afford to travel by train are the ones who have least choice over when they can travel, by which I mean least ability to plan when they're going to travel. So for a lot of people, that having to decide 3 months in advance to get the cheapest tickets from a very limited pool is a blocker to them being able to use the train. So, and this is also backwards statistically. Almost 90% of standard class advanced fares on our pilot routes are available. It's saying that advanced fares are the ticket of choice for most of our customers on LNER. Now, that yes, current customers, that's not a measure of all the people you're excluding as a result of that being the only way to buy cheap tickets. Also, advanced fares are demand managed, so you decide how many advanced fares there are, how many more or few advanced fares are available. It's backwards. Sorry, David, that's backwards. How many people aren't able to travel by rail because advanced tickets are seen as the only way to justify cheap prices? So here's David again. Our new semi-flexible ticket gives our advanced ticket customers the option of add-on flexibility. You can start your journey up to 70 minutes before or after you booked trains. To date, more than 70,000 semi-flex fares have been sold. Interestingly, of those flexing, 3 times more are choosing to travel earlier rather than later. This is a pilot, and we're monitoring closely the results and feedback from our customers. You can find out more here, and there's a link. Again, this for me, this is being driven to create revenue neutrality by Treasury. So they don't want people to be paying less overall for rail. They want to make sure that the same number of pounds are crossing the ticket office counter, as it were, virtually or otherwise. And as others, Man in C61, for example, has pointed out, Marcus said this is not a simplification. If anything, it adds complexity. Certainly is the same level of complexity. Flexibility of 70 before, 70 after is still not providing the flexibility that that's still limiting on flexibility. There's a flexibility there, but it's still limiting. It means that there is very little difference between the advance and the there's no fare with no change of flexibility between advance at tens of pounds and or more still, and the walk-on fares at hundreds of pounds. I just don't agree that this is the right thing. And I again, for me, it's well, look at our current passengers, and this for me embodies an attitude of the railways and the rail industry of, well, this is how we slightly tweak things to increase this identical type of passenger that we currently have. It's like, no, all the people, stop looking at the people who are travelling by rail and deciding how to start looking at the people who do not travel by rail and understand how you can make their life easier and bring them on. And this isn't the way to do it. Talking of things that people can afford or cannot afford, Railcards. So the Railcard discount is being dropped a bit, not a huge amount, but a bit, this month. In fact, it's happened already, inevitably. And what can I say about Railcards? Well, what I can say about Railcards is I think most of them shouldn't exist. I think we should just bring all rail fares down by a third. Additional rail cards for those who deserve an improvement in a greater fare. So, for example, a disabled rail card absolutely should. So, if we reduce all rail fares by a third, a disabled rail card should continue to exist that offers a 50% discount. Why? Because the railways continue to be extremely inaccessible, and people's life is hell when they travel by rail. If you're in a wheelchair, or if you're with any other kind of disability, or any other way that the railway has disabled you, you therefore merit your experience is that much worse than everyone else, and so a discount is only is the least we can do as an industry. But no, I don't think rail cards should exist, because again, it's a thing of rich people can afford the cheapest fares, because the people who are better off, people like me, can afford the rail card. People who are not better off cannot afford the 60, 70, 80, 90, however much it is these days, cost of a rail card. So they have to pay the higher fares. It's not fair. To which end, I've been dissing Burnham, well, not really dissing Burnham earlier for his HS2 report. I understand why I did it. But a good thing that Burnham has done, absolutely, in Great Manchester, is spreading the annual bus ticket cost, spreading those costs through local credit unions, which is a really good idea, because all of a sudden the thing that makes your life much cheaper to travel around by public transport, but you can't afford because £240 isn't something that a lot of people have kicking around. Spreading that cost to sorry, that's a £240 saving a year, not the cost of it a year, but the hundreds of pounds a year for the annual bus ticket. But basically, buying annual passes via weekly payment to a credit union is a good way of improving that accessibility, to my mind. This feels like a positive thing. I'm interested to know what other people think, but this feels positive to me. Talking of fares again, though, we have these punitive measures to try and dissuade people from travelling on incorrect tickets. And there's been other discussions. I was interviewed recently about the potential that there might be some, can we be more fair on people who've made a genuine mistake? No is the answer, because how on earth do you work out what is a genuine and what is not a genuine mistake? That's putting a lot of onus onto on-train staff who should not have to make those sorts of decisions and face a potential abuse as a result. No, far better to just to take a different. Let's not be prescriptive. Take a different approach to the punitive measures. But a good example is that there are lots of legal problems with the way that rail fares are enforced. And not least more recently, where passengers were prosecuted under what's called the single justice procedure when they should not have been, which meant that thousands of rail fare prosecutions were declared void after a judge's ruling back in mid-August, meaning lots of people are being paid quite a lot of money back, hundreds of pounds, in some cases possibly more. So it's a big old penalty whoops, again, because of how messy, all the punitive measures we use and the overreach the industry tries to create to claim back revenue. This is again part of the problem with the railways trying to consider itself a business rather than a public service. I'm not saying we shouldn't have some level of enforcement, but you wouldn't necessarily need to have some of these things happening if there were more staff on trains. Yeah. Anyway, what else? Let's continue with the fares theme. So Brisbane. Let's head down to Australia. Back in August, the rollout of 50-cent travel across Brisbane, new data revealed that there's an increase in 50% for trams, 14% for trains, 7% for buses, and nearly 40% for ferries, with the rollout of a new cheap flat fare. So that's interesting to follow that up a bit later and see how that's gone. But really nice to see some, again, cheap versus zero fare public transport. I have mixed feelings on the evidence of zero. In fact, I talk about it in the book. The evidence of zero fare public transport is limited. Talk about it in the latest W2IP actually, which I'm popping up on soon, I'm sure. Really limited, and it's difficult to. It's like fares are the risk you have is that people who already travel just travel more, and it doesn't change. So mixed feelings. There are different trials and different successes, and I think there's not a one size fits all on how fares, how you manage fares in urban areas. But this seems to be a great success. Right. So what else have we got to say? So government is bus back better is back ? So some good stuff that government is doing is prioritising buses. I'm very pleased Louise continues to have a bee in her bonnet about buses. I'm very glad to see that. Extremely disappointed in Louise's quotes being picked up about attitudes to unions. I don't know why Louise has been quoted that. I need to dig into exactly what she said and possibly even offer her a chance to flesh out those comments, because they're extremely disappointing. But I'm not going to pick them up now. That's one for another episode. Bus back better is back. So there's some good stuff about buses. Local communities basically taking control over the buses. More local authorities can run their buses again, and public control, whether that's franchising or ideally full out municipal bus companies owned by councils, would be quite good. Anyway, buses. So that's good. What's bad is that the government has approved expansion of London City Airport's services, so more flights in and out of London City Airport, which is obviously completely wild a thing to approve right now, particularly in the moment where you can agree with that within minutes of being elected. But when it comes to HS2, they still have not made their mind up at all on remotely, in fact, on what they are and are not going to do. Meanwhile, there's lots of stuff about new towns. The generation of new towns will kickstart economic growth. Well, okay, a few things on this. Number one, very little evidence of anything to do with public transport in these wonderful new towns. So, all these new town plans that they're showing us pictures of don't seem to be. And part of the deregulation to allow these things to appear quicker seems to be making it easier to just not think about active travel, walking, cycling, the transport hierarchy, bus provision and rail connections. You can ignore all that and just get on with building the houses, which will magically fix the economy. Except that it won't. Here's Dan Davis. Well worth following Dan for lots of data. This thread perfectly summarises the problem with UK policy debate. A chart showing that infrastructure is 3 times as important as house building in a thread which is all about where shall we build all these lovely houses. This is a thread from the Resolution Foundation. And the thread is going, isn't it going to be wonderful to build all these houses? And that's how Labour are going to save the UK economy, is by giving the infinite money cheat to private house builders, which is, by the way, it will not work. Just in the same way as it's a bit of a fucking magic solution, in the same way that saying that more private healthcare will save the NHS, and rather than say, massively expanding and subsidising particularly end of life care, but whole life care, so that the NHS isn't relied on as a kind of a public service of last resort. Also, funding the NHS appropriately, that might fix the NHS and bring waiting times down. But AI and private healthcare, which by the way is all staffed by NHS staff anyway, suggesting that's going to fix it is fucking magic. Just in the same way that saying just giving the infinite money cheat to private housing developers is going to save the economy. It won't. It's fucking magic. Sorry, that should be fucking. There we go. I just got my beeps correct there. Anyway, so the interesting little thread to go through. Well worth going and actually picking through some of the information around that. But that thread is very interesting because it very painfully just seems to be ignoring the fact that infrastructure is what we should be investing in. And good grief, the infrastructure we should be investing in is more sustainable energy generation, more water infrastructure, more marine infrastructure, in terms of coastal protection and inland flooding protection, and more railways. Just a shit ton of railways, a dump ton of urban transit systems, trams in every big town, blah blah blah. That's what we should be investing in. And backing this up is an important report that's come out, a rare Office of Budget Responsibility win, in that they've just published our latest paper on public investment and how it can affect potential output. So big implications for this is Tom Railton here, who's kind of well worth. He's the Director of Advocacy and Campaigns at the Economic Change Unit. Kind of worthwhile, another worthwhile follow. Very nice thread, kind of going through and saying, what was the OBR? This report, maybe we'll flick through at some point. What was the OBR found? The OBR's found that public investment boosts growth, and that this impact is greater in the long term than the short term. Well, we all know that, fine. A 1% of GDP increase in public investment boosts output by 0.5% after 5 years, but 2.5% after 50 years. So that's obvious, right? So increasing GDP in public, increase the percentage of GDP that is in public investment. After 5 years, you're only getting half. You've not got that back yet, but the boost to GDP is 250%, 250 times the input, after 50 years. So again, shouldn't be surprising. If you think, so this is Tom's words, if you think about, for example, building a railway, most of the impact occurs over the long term, not in the first couple of years, of course. The OBR also finds that public investment is good value for money, with a 1% increase generating an average economic return of 8.7% and fiscal return of 1.7%. As the OBR notes, this return is higher than government borrowing costs, meaning borrowing to invest is good value for money. Euphemism being for that, which is borrowing is still free. Like money it absolutely merits its own public investment. Public infrastructure investment absolutely just merits on its own merits is a good thing. Tom continues, why does all this matter? Because the UK's fiscal rules this is critical, only have a 5-year time horizon. So only the impact in the first few years counts. This means that our fiscal rules ignore most of the beneficial aspects of public investment. That's right, the rules have been written to make sure that the government doesn't make your life better. In fact, this chart there's a chart in the OBR report, which is very nice. This chart shows that the horizon of our fiscal rules is precisely at the point when public investment is having the least impact on GDP. That's the key thing. Horizon of our fiscal rules is precisely at the point when public investment is having the least impact on GDP. That's the way that our justification for not doing public investment works. This is further evidence that our current fiscal rules are simply not appropriate. By ignoring the positive impacts of public investment, they encourage governments to cut investment, which damages long-term growth and traps us in the fiscal doom loop. We urgently need to reform this short-termist fiscal framework so that our public finances can be truly sustainable. Lots of suggestions out there from the likes of the Institute for Government, NIESR, National Institute of Economic something else, SETEX, LSE, the IPPR and NEF, of course, and hopefully government will actually look at these. So, very good thread. That's thanks, Tom, for putting that one in. And yeah, an interesting report from the OBR. will government pay attention to this? No, they won't. Of course they won't. And to paint that bigger, painful picture, this is a little extract that I caught back at the end of July, and it just angered me, so I wanted to highlight it. About the euro crisis, this is actually true. So there's a quote here that someone was pointing at. Angela Merkel started crying in a meeting because Obama insisted she spend money to support the economy. Now, this is just, yeah. Angela Merkel painted as this sort of steely figure, and she, her response to being told by Obama that public investment is a necessary precursor to economic liberation. Okay, Obama very much not perfect, but this is the response, and this is why Europe is in such a mess, because unfortunately German economic theory is what drives most of the EU's and sort of European Commission's economic theory. To the start, this is this quote from the Financial Times that kind of backs this little thing up. To the astonishment of almost everyone in the room, Angela Merkel began to cry. Das ist nicht fair. That is not fair, the German Chancellor said angrily, tears welling in her eyes. Ich bringe mich nicht selbst I am not going to commit suicide. So, spending money to support the economy. That's unfortunately the neolib view of solving our problems. Is no, don't do that. Do not do that. And it's a rot that runs from the top. Anton de BR, let's talk about the person who coined the term gadget ban. People often attribute this to me. No, it was not me. It was Anton. Anton de BR has been very busy doing stuff. For a while, I've been working on a startup to design the next generation of day and night trains, optimizing space usage, comfort, and economics all at once. The idea is to make night trains economically viable, a true alternative to flying while being super comfortable. And there's a little thread on Twitter you can go through, and a website that's well worth going and having a look at. And we're going to get Anton on to talk about it, because I'm fascinated by this. One of the major challenges is fitting sleeper train stock out in such a way that there's any business case for having it. Most of the time it sits doing nothing, and lots of quite expensive and quite heavy coaches sat around. So managing that is challenging. I'm very interested for Anton to do a little bit of a pitch to us so we can have a look. I'll be very keen to do that, and I think it'll be very interesting. So we're going to do that. We're going to have a look soon, I'm sure. We will have our third Ireland episode soon. It should have been tonight, but I am an idiot and I'm going to be at Nerf, so obviously that's not happening. Grand Central miss. So this is the new Grand Central station in Belfast. Disappointed cyclists forced to lock bikes on outdoor railings at Belfast's new Grand Central station as it opens with no cycle parking provision. Whoops. Belfast Cycling Campaign, shout out to those folks. This suggests that active travel is not a central part of this new transport hub, is what Belfast Cycling Campaign said, as Translate confirms that it's sourcing temporary cycle parking to install. Brilliant. So who on earth designed this thing for it to be built without any cycling parking? This is baffling. What were they thinking? Oh my goodness, what a mess. At some point I look forward to visiting and having a look around, but it's very, very frustrating for that to happen. Just absolute basic stuff. We should be building in, particularly a big central city centre hub like this, it should be getting built with, eons of cycle parking. Like parking coming out their ears. Just look at the Dutch levels of cycle parking. Build it and they will come. It's really frustrating. Big swing and a miss. Oh, how angry. What else have we got to talk about? Oh, yeah, lifts. Definitely this might be an episode that I do as a live, or it might not be, depending on if I get who I can get to talk about this, because I wouldn't mind talking to a lift manufacturer to understand what their view is on why this is not happening. But lifts are crap, and the Office of Rail and Road have said that passengers need improved reliability and real-time information for station lifts. 6 faults for each passenger lift over a year. Apparently they're going to take a deeper look at Network Rail's approach to planning, carrying out lift maintenance and repairs. Just the fact that lifts are just constantly broken. Like I just whenever I take the train, I'm just spotting broken lifts. York. I don't know when the last York so rarely has both of its lifts working at the moment, or sort of both of its subways working because one or more lifts is broken. It's incredibly frustrating and just very exclusionary for people traveling on the trains. Whether you're in a wheelchair or you are just want to take the lift because you've got a little luggage, or if you've got a buggy with a little one, really, really, really damaging to people's ability to travel by train. Happy news, of course, is Ivor. That's right. Ivor the engine is here in Dublo. Rapido Trains has done a little collab with Small Films and with the Firmin estate and the Postgate estate. think it's Daniel. Is it Daniel Postgate? Who's the offspring of the kind of the current estate owner? Anyway, Ivor the Engine's going to exist in Double O, and although the wagons don't look hugely authentic to the series, the loco certainly does. It does look like that's recognisably Ivor the Engine right there, which is nice. Quite expensive, but it's Rapido, and they've made this thing with love. I look forward to seeing this out there in the wild. Very, very cool, actually. Very cool. And I think that is that. Yeah. This was 38 minutes ish. Okay, 35 minutes. Fine. This will be available in audio only. I'm a little behind on the episodes as ever. The challenge is that I can't immediately download the episode from YouTube, which means I can't do it the night of the episode, and then I don't have any other night really to do it because I don't have family comes first a little bit. So that's why I've been struggling to juggle this properly, but I should be able to get back on top of it again coming up, and this one hopefully will come out soon. So all good podcasting platforms, hello. Patreon.com/GarethDennis for supporting me. Thank you to all you lovely Patreon supporters out there. You allow me to continue to keep a roof over my head to a certain extent at this point. I mean, you're not paying my salary, but it certainly helps make things a bit easier for me while I'm in the process of job hunting. GarethDennis.co.uk/merch for the merchandise, of which the See It Say It Sacked mug has become very popular. PayPal.me/GarethDennis for loose change and abuse, and GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for the chat. Continue ad infinitum. Hello everyone in the chat. Lovely to see you. I'm waving, but you can't see because there's no visual version of my face. Actually, I will give you a wave at the end. Yes, the book, of course, is available for pre-order. This book, this tatty version, is no longer available, though, because Howard has it. Howard, hello. Excellent work in picking this up from Darby Greggs. I now have another version. In fact, my third version of my own personal copy, because the second one went to Alex Priestley last week. Anyway, so yeah, how the Railways will fix the future. Popping up in the Acid Horizons or in the Zero Repeater podcast talking about the book. So if you want to have a little chat about the book or see me chatting about the book with someone, then you can go and do that and have a look. Next week might not be a pre-record. Episode 232, the crash of Independent Air Flight 1851. We're gonna go back to this one again. I want to talk about this crash. I just think it's an interesting thing to look at. What lessons can we learn from it? I think there's some interesting things for us to pick out. There's a reason why I wanted to do it, so we're going to do that. In the meantime, I'm going to go big face and say hello everyone. I'm going to run upstairs, put a suit on, get on my bicycle, cycle into town, and present and host an evening of of shenanigans with about going to be a room of 100 and some interesting presentations. So that'll be fun. In the meantime, I will see you all next week. Cheerio! Cheerio!